I've been in music for as far back as I can remember. I remember being a choir boy in a church in Edinburgh in Scotland. I can remember being a bugler in a scout band in Rhodesia and a drummer in a pipe band in boarding school in South Africa and singing in school operettas and then going back to Rhodesia where I come from originally and forming a skiffle band, then a rock and roll band, and then immigrating to South Africa as a folk singer and playing in coffee bars, being in a folk group. It's been all my life, music. The skiffle band was a cheap way of making music in those days. It was the days of Lonnie Donegan, who was the top British skiffle band. The skiffle band consisted of a washboard, a tea chest, bass. We made our bass out of a 5 Roses tea chest, a piece of curtain cord, and a Rhodesian penny, which had a hole in it, and we used that as a washer, and that was our bass. We had an old washboard and 2 nondescript, no-name brand guitars, which we bought in a trading store. They cost £1.15 each, those guitars. And we used to make music. I think it was 1 7 it cost us to put the band on the road. The name of that skiffle group was the Bush Cats, and we entertained in the town of Luanshya where I was actually born. That band was actually very well known. I think it was the only band. But we brought a lot of smiles to a lot of people's faces and all the antics and the 3 chords that we used to play. But we used to play songs like Bring a Little Water, Sylvie, and all those old skiffle tunes. The Belgian Congo blew up in 1960. And we were all called up to the army. We had already done our basic training, but we were called up to go to the Congo border. And our function was to patrol around there and bring refugees out. And it was quite a big operation. Those guitars went with us to the border. And when we'd come off a patrol, we'd sit down and entertain the tired troops. And we made parodies. Didn't write songs really, but made parodies of current songs or old songs like Bongo Bongo Bongo, I Don't Want to Leave the Congo. We changed it to Dr. Hastings Banda, I Don't Want to Leave Luanshya. And then there was a song called The Garden of Eden. When you walk in the Garden of Eden. We wrote a parody. When you walk in Tagagan, Rhodesia. Tagagan was a barracks that we were assembled in at one time. So we wrote parodies, sort of political things that were happening at the time. I was entertaining my fellow troops, and sometimes the officers would say, these 2 guys with the guitars, or that guy with the guitar, bring him up to the officers' mess. And we've got a few ladies coming around for cocktails. This was out at Bonamakuba Barracks. And let's ask these troopers to come and play a few songs for us. So we were VIPs in a way, because sometimes we got out of camp to go and play for the officers. After the Congo uprisings and all the troubles in Nyasaland, we were also in Nyasaland with those guitars. After those troubles had died down and the breakup of the Federation, I immigrated to South Africa to further my career in music. UDI was in 1965, and shortly after that, terrorist incursions began in Rhodesia. And of course the army was called up and things escalated into a terrorist war. And there was an officer in KG6 barracks in Salisbury sitting in the mess one night, and he said to another officer, "Wonder where those guys are that played those guitars for us in the Congo." And Sergeant Major Dave Newell, he was an old friend of mine from Ndola, said, "I know where they are. I'll give you their telephone number." And I got this telephone call from Dave Newell in Salisbury saying, "The army's looking for you. Would you like to risk your life and come back and come and entertain the troops? Because the morale it's not bad, but it would be better if you came up and sang a few songs." Of course, I jumped at that idea. That would be a real adrenaline thing for me. So I did my first trip up to the sharp end way back in, can't remember the year, And from then on, I was 3, 4, 5 times a year going up to Rhodesia, to the sharp end. The very first time I went, I'd been, trying to be a pop singer in South Africa, and I had hair down to my shoulders. And I got to Cranbourne Barracks, and they said to me, okay, sign this indemnity, and this is your officer, Lieutenant Tom Douglas. He's going to take you to all these hotspots. And of course, Tom took one look at me, and I had hair down to my shoulders, and he had short back and sides. And he was a real tough-looking little officer. And I thought, wow, I wouldn't like to be under him. And there was like an icy thing between us on the road. And after a few kilometers, he nearly had an accident with this Land Rover. Somebody shot a traffic light. We weren't even out of Salisbury, and he nearly wrote me off. After that, the ice was broken, and we became very good friends. And he took me to just about every hotspot in Rhodesia. We did the whole war together. And of course, today we are firm friends. After these stints, I would come back to South Africa, and some of the incidents and things that happened while I was there made a deep impression on me. And that's when I write songs, when something makes a deep impression on me. And that's where the material for the songs came from. And I started writing songs about my experiences at the sharp end with the troops. And somebody said to me, you should record them. Of course, I'd been knocking on every door in Johannesburg trying to be an artist, and they chased me away. They said, look, you can write a few songs. Your writing's not bad. 4 Jacks and the Jill recorded a couple of them, but go and learn to be a singer. So I thought, well, my lot is just to be a troopie entertainer. I went from record company to record company, and then I found a wonderful record company in Johannesburg that said to me, we'll record those songs about the war, but we'd like to contribute to the war effort. We want you to give all your royalties to the Border Patrol Welfare Fund. And of course, I'd never made a record, and this was a great opportunity for me to make a record. And the royalties meant nothing to me. As long as I could be with my buddies up there, it would be great. So they made the first record, Troopiesongs Phase 1. It was released in Rhodesia, only in Rhodesia, and went to the radio, and the radio supported it, the media supported it, and the people supported it, because they identified with some of the songs that were on that record, some of the things that I'd written about. And after that came Phase 2, then Phase 3, then Phase 4. So there were 4 Troopiesong albums eventually on the market. The first one went gold, and I think the other 3 had silver status. Now, gold status was like 10,000 sales, which is a lot of albums in a little country like Rhodesia. And the silver status was about 5,000 or 7,000. So they all went gold and silver, sold an enormous amount of records, and generated an enormous amount of funds for the Border Patrol Welfare Fund. The Border Patrol Welfare Fund was for war widows and rehabilitation, and they even bought equipment. I think they bought a couple of ambulances, fully equipped ambulances. Now, a fully equipped ambulance in those days cost 10,000 Rhodesian dollars, which was a lot of money in those days. The media and the radio really supported Troopiesongs, and Sally Donaldson was the Force's sweetheart announcer. Sally actually presented me with my gold disc in Salisbury once. It was a great honor to have that wonderful lady to present me with my gold disc. And Sally used to play my stuff to the soldiers on her Forces program. Some composers compose on piano, and some composers compose on guitar, or the instrument that they're proficient on. I compose on guitar, and I have several guitars. I started off with an old Trek guitar. It was a £1.15, and from there I graduated to a slightly better guitar, usually a no-name brand guitar. And actually the first professional guitar I bought was a Hofner solid body. That was when the Bushcats moved from skiffle into rock and roll. It was the time of the Beatles. And when I came down to South Africa, I went into folk, so I traded my Hofner solid body guitar in for a Hofner 12-string guitar. And on that 12-string I composed a lot of songs, because in a 12-string you can hear all sorts of melodies. It's got such a range of tones in it, and it was a wonderful guitar to compose on. And I then got my Fender Malibu guitar. That was the one that I took with me to the border. It didn't used to go out of tune as easily as a 12-string. And that guitar, I called her Ursula because she had a lovely shape. She was shaped like Ursula Andress, so that was her name. And that guitar went everywhere. She'd been shot at and dropped out of helicopters and bashed around, and it's to this day I still use it on stage. And I had a backup guitar, a Gibson Jumbo, which I called Olga. I don't know why I called it Olga, but they all had names. And after that I got myself a banjo. I love a banjo because a banjo is like, gives you the feeling like walking into a room of antiques. It's got that old sound. And composed a couple of songs on that banjo, historical songs. And of course I'd always wanted to play the bagpipes, and I had a set of bagpipes which I still have today. Great for playing on stage. Not a great piper, but even composed a song called the Penalonga Piper on the bagpipes. You couldn't really compose a Scottish sounding song on a guitar, so I actually composed a couple of songs on those bagpipes, well, on the chanter anyway. After the war, my records stopped selling because when Zimbabwe went independent, those records were banned from the radio stations. As a matter of fact, there's a very funny incident I could tell you about. There was some records left in one of the libraries there, and one of the announcers pulled this record out, and he just put a cut on and went to the toilet, and that cut was the UDI song, and it was playing over the radio in Zimbabwe. I think he was fired. I think he's still in Chikurubi, that guy. But anyway, that was a very funny incident. But the records disappeared. They were packed in suitcases, and as Rhodesians emigrated to the far corners of the world, they took their vinyl records with them and their tapes. And of course, eventually those records were either battered by the sun or stolen, and the tapes stretched, and they became almost extinct. And of course, these Rhodesians always stuck together and formed little Rhodesian associations in Canada, Australia, UK, United States of America, New Zealand. And I started getting requests for tapes or records, because now I'd lost all their records. So I went back to this record company and I said, don't you want to release the tapes and records again? And they said, look, we don't want to touch that. Drop it like a hot brick. Things are very sensitive in South Africa. We don't want to be associated anything to do with UDI or the war. We're going through a sensitive time. So I said to them, would you like to sell me the master tapes? They said, yes. I said, well, how much? Because I was still a struggling folk singer. They said, look, we'll be fair with you. We'll sell them to you for the budget that we gave you to make them. I think it was a couple of R100 budget per album. That's how cheap it was. Well, in those days, R100 was a lot of money. And I went to the record company and I bought my masters back. And I started manufacturing tapes. I didn't manufacture vinyl records, but I manufactured tapes and started selling my tapes at my shows. And that paid for my petrol, and my transport to get to these little get-togethers. Then I started getting calls from abroad to come over to America and UK and Australia to entertain at their get-togethers. And I got this one particular phone call from the United States. The guy said, we want you to come over to the States, and we're having our Rhodesian Veterans Association, it was called. We're having our get-together in Las Vegas. We want you to come. I said, guys, I can go to Vereeniging and I can go to Durban and Messina, but it's going to cost me a lot of money. I haven't got that kind of money. They said, don't worry, you'll be getting a call from Johannesburg, Jan Smuts Airport. Somebody coming over and they'll bring you some airfares. I got this telephone call a few weeks later. This Rhodesian accent. I'm at the airport, you come up and see me. I've got something for you. So off I went to the airport, met this guy. Couldn't miss him, he had a big bush hat on. Just looked like a Rhodesian, just come out of the bush. Veldschoens. Gave me this bag of money. He says, that's for your fare. Teresa, my wife, and my youngest son, John Ross, went off to the United States. And I played in Las Vegas at the Holiday Inn. And across the road was Julia Iglesias at Caesar's Palace. So it was great, you know, to be on the same street as Julia Iglesias. It was a really wonderful trip. They were so kind, showed us America. We visited Rhodesians in Arizona and California and you name it. After that, I went to the United Kingdom a couple of times, Scotland, and I was invited to go to Australia to march in the Anzac Day parade. And that's when the Rhodesians had their little get-together. Now, the Rhodesians are one of the only foreign armies that are allowed to march with the Australians in the Anzac Day parade, because Rhodesians and Australian diggers fought many, many battles together throughout the wars. And I was very honoured to carry the green and white flag down the streets of Sydney with a contingent of Rhodesian, ex-Rhodesian soldiers marching behind me. It was a wonderful experience. I was taking my tapes with me to America and Australia and the UK. And those tapes gave me my pocket money, because it was all very well getting your airfare paid, but when you were in America, you had to live. Of course, technology improves by the minute, and CDs were the order of the day. So I took my tapes and put them onto CD and started selling CDs. But it was difficult I couldn't just take CDs to my shows. There weren't that many shows, so I had to market them somehow. And the internet became the media where I began marketing my CDs. CDs began selling all over the world, and I got orders from the most outrageous places. Finland, Sweden, and soldiers fighting in Bosnia, Iraq, United States soldiers, Marines from the Marine Corps ordering my CDs. I wondered where these soldiers got wind of my Troopiesongs, and why would an American Marine want to buy a set of Troopiesongs? Well, it came home to me that a lot of sons of Rhodesian soldiers had followed their father's military careers, and some of them had gone to Sandhurst and become officers in the British Army and were fighting in Bosnia, Iraq, or wherever. And they would be playing their Troopiesongs to fellow soldiers, and the fellow soldiers would say, where did you get that? And they'd say, well, I got it through the internet. And that's how the orders came in. Now, I'd get these emails from the UK, and the opening line will always be, or would always be, I grew up on your music. These sons and daughters of Rhodesians had grown up with Troopiesongs during the war in Rhodesia, and they want to get them on CD now. So that's how the sales have now been going. People from all over the world. There's even a company in Russia, well, not a company, a pirate in Russia that's pirating Troopiesongs and selling it on the internet. So there's pirates all over the world copying my stuff and pirating it. The inspiration for my songs come from deep impressions. things that have touched me somewhere along the line. And going to the sharp end and experiencing all those things gave me a lot of material or reasons to write songs. For instance, I was entertaining the townsfolk at a place called Sonoya. And I just finished my concert, and I came out of the concert, and all the people were there, you know, saying, "Can I have your autograph?" And "I want to meet you." And some ladies would say, "My son's fighting at such and such a place," or "My husband's away." And this little boy came up to me, and he was dressed in a little soldier suit, and he had a cap on and sergeant stripes, and he saluted me. And I said, "What's your name?" He says, "I'm Sergeant Guy." He says, "My daddy's in the army, who actually was in the police, and he's out fighting at the moment. He's coming back next week because it's my birthday, and we're going to go fishing." And he told me his complete life story. When I got back to Johannesburg, I related this story to my daughter Shelley, and she was really taken with this story about Sergeant Guy. So she wrote the actual lyric about Sergeant Guy, and that's where that song actually came from. When the Hunyani airliner was shot down, that made an incredible impact on me. And I came back to Johannesburg, and I told my family about this terrible thing. Well, they'd seen it on the news and heard it on the news. And we were really shocked about it. And my daughter went into her room and she wrote a couple of lines down. She wrote, "You ain't no hero when you kill a child and you cannot cry. You ain't no hero when you shoot a liner from the sky." She put those words in front of me, and that was just the start of that song, "You Ain't No Hero." So that's the way the songs come out, and even my children help me to write songs. Technology changes by the minute. Started off with vinyl records, then it went on to tapes, then onto CD, and now, of course, we've got the wonder of DVD. And that's why I've made a DVD about Troopiesongs, and I hope to make some more. And it's a wonderful media of how to portray your thoughts, what the song is actually about. And we're very, very lucky to be able to get some footage of the real live happenings of the Bush War. And if it wasn't for guys like Harmon Cusack, who was actually a cameraman and trained as a paratrooper to jump into, with the troops, into an operational area and film actual battles. If it wasn't for people like that, we wouldn't have this wonderful footage. And you can get it. And we've used a lot of this footage of real live battle shots on this DVD. Of course, there's a lot of shots that I wouldn't be able to get. I wouldn't be able to capture the actual story of Sergeant Guy. So we'll have to recreate some of the scenes. And we've done that on this DVD. We've been as authentic as possible, and we've actually got young actors with my uniform on to act some of the stories of the songs. Troopiesongs there were 4 albums of Troopiesongs, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. And after that I wrote an album called Troopies in Exile. And I will continue writing things that make a deep impression on me. As a matter of fact, I'm busy writing at this time. They're not real Troopiesongs, but they might be about my experiences. For instance, I have written a song for Sally Donaldson. It's called Song for Sally, all the wonderful things that she did. I've written another one saluting the Selous Scouts, Pamwe Cheti. I've written one about my old regiment, the Rhodesia Regiment. You know, I wrote songs for the RLI. I wrote songs for the RAR. I wrote songs for so many regiments and outfits. And I actually didn't forget, but I didn't write a song about the Rhodesia Regiment. So I've written a song called Rhodesia Regiment. And I've written a song about Umtali. I've written about just about every town in Rhodesia, and it wasn't left out on purpose. But I've got a new song for Umtali. So it's ongoing. I'll be writing and writing. You know, old soldiers never die, and neither do old guitar players and composers. We just fade away. But I hope I won't be fading away for a while. You know, there's no such thing as an ex-Rhodesian, because there's no such thing as an ex-South African or an ex-Scotsman or an ex-Englishman. You are a Rhodesian, no matter where you are, where you went. And I will continue writing songs about my beautiful nation, the Rhodesians.